Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love, Shemeka Michelle, and Wilfred Riley.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love, alongside my co-host with the lip gloss, Shemeka Michelle, and the invisible co-host, Will Riley. And joining us this week is Jennifer Kabbany. She is the editor of the College Fix, so I know we're going to have fun talking about what's going on college campuses. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is very good to have you. So I want to start off by, I guess, asking you to catch us up. So for a while, all of the media, when they talked about education, was all around college. It was all this, canceling and yelling people off of campus and telling, we remember all the viral videos of, why are you working here? And you can't stay here. There's a very famous guy who used to be a professor with a very popular podcast who's not a professor anymore because he decided to show up to work on the day that only the blacks were supposed to show up. So that was in the news. It was a news story every day. Plenty of them, but that made national news. And then now it's all gone. So I guess I have to start by asking you, did we solve all the problems at colleges, or is it just being kind of overshadowed by the wokeness in K through 12?
No, we haven't solved all the problems. And in fact, they're actually much worse.
How could they be worse?
They are. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Let me explain. So first of all, what happened was over this last year, because everybody was off campus, people think, well, everything must have been calm and mellow because there were no protests, but there were. Building names were stripped of their monikers because of whatever reason, whether the person had said something wrong 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, or done something wrong, 50 or a century ago. So names were being taken off buildings, statues were still being removed. People were still having problems on Twitter when they said something controversial, and the school would either punish them, whether that's a professor or a student. So the cancel culture atmosphere never went away, even though we've been, doing the online schooling thing for the last year. Things are just as active as ever. And really, you can trace that back to, May of 2020. Because after George Floyd, all of the universities wanted to be actively anti-racist, proactively anti-racist. So the way that they did that was continued to sanitize their campuses of anything that might offend students or make them be reminded of America's history, including, again, like I said, building names, statues, controversial comments, etc. So the protest has turned into sort of an online cancel culture campaign that's been pretty busy this last 12 months.
Wow. So it's gotten worse, man. But even when we were paying attention to it, it always seemed odd to me. It's separate from the racism. We can get into the argument about who is racist and who owned slaves and who said what in 1842. Which is a problem. I'm not saying I agree with them, but okay, we can have that conversation. I don't get the feelings thing. And I'm gonna have to go to Shemeka on this because Shemeka can really make this stuff clear and plain, but I don't know when it happened, but I also don't know why the adults in the room decided that they wanted to care about, we all had feelings, and we used to be like, I feel like doing this and I don't feel like doing that, or this bothers me. And people used to tell us give us a dose of reality, I guess, so to speak. Not to necessarily be mean, but to say, I remember adults saying when I was a teenager in college age, the world doesn't care about that. They don't care about you. You need to just go out there and do this and produce. But now it's we have to jump every time somebody feels something. He is coming in talking. Seriously. Shemeka, what do you think about this feelings-focused stuff?
Oh, yeah, but not like, I don't want humidity.
Go on mute, Will. Your background is hot. But go ahead. Feelings.
Okay. Well, certainly, first of all, let me say this is perfect because I am in a college dorm, as you may can tell, moving my daughter in. I don't know if, I won't say what college she's at, but she is at a HBCU, so I don't know if she has to worry about them having any slave owners or Confederates on the buildings. But, the feelings I noticed changed, when they were concerned about people's feelings. Probably when my daughter that's in college now, maybe was about in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, I can remember them having tug of war. And when one side won, as we were all excited, yeah, woo, yeah, you lost, you suck, you're a loser, the kids were really excited about it.
The things
And
you're
the
supposed to do.
teachers, right, the teachers were
Building
like,
character.
no, don't celebrate. You're going to make the other side feel bad. And I'm thinking here as a parent I'm there for field day. I'm thinking they're supposed to feel bad. They suck. They lost, And I was like, wow, like we're really, like, I think that's when the light bulb kind of went off for me. Like, we're raising punks in this generation. We're raising a bunch of wusses that are not going to be able to deal with anything in life. And to me, if you ask me, those are the ones that go and shoot up the school when they're just not used to dealing with real things. Like sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. That's just the way it is. Sometimes people like you and sometimes they don't. You may get picked on in school. Maybe you won't. But it's okay. When I was growing up, I had a bully. I didn't get to stay home. I didn't get to cry about it. The principal called us in the office, me and a couple other kids that were getting bullied, and she told us, stand together, because it was a one bully. She said, stand together. If she bullies one, she has to bully all. And we had to, like, we couldn't cry and whine and stay home from school. My mother couldn't come up to the school and say, you all need to stop bullying my daughter. I had to stand up to it and deal with it. I got called a black African booty scratcher. I got called skinny minnie, bony wony, whatever, and I still had to deal with it. And I think that's why I'm able to cope with people online now, because it's like, hey, I have dealt with worse. You typing behind your keyboard is not going to hurt my feelings.
Now, see, I knew you. I wanted to go to you because I knew you were going to bring some truth and some honesty about, don't be a wuss. Of course, you were going to go overboard. I have to. I'm sorry, Will and Jennifer. So the principal saying, all right, you 4 people being bullied, come here. So this one bully is bullying you. I'm not going to discipline her. But what I will do is give you some strong advice. You also just make her bully all of you?
Yeah, if she's gonna, so you have to stick together, and once she realized that we were sticking together, she couldn't just bully one of us, she left us alone.
Well, the
And
principal
she
probably, if they were going to do that, probably just told you to get together and then beat her up. Why didn't she just say that?
She should have, but she didn't. I mean, I guess she was pretty much telling us if that's what it has to come down to, then that's what it comes down to, as long as we stick together.
But I want to hear your, since you focus on colleges, Jennifer, I want to hear your response. But I know Will has something to say, especially since Shemeka did her kind of slight sideway dig at the HBCU. Go ahead and defend your peep, Will.
Well, I mean, yeah, at HBCUs, first of all, we don't have a whole lot of buildings that are named after slave masters in the first place, unless the slave masters were black, which adds a whole new dimension.
Which existed.
Yeah, it's about 10% of black people. History is complicated. But in general, I pretty much agree. I think that what we're doing right now, having solved a lot of traditional problems, is moving past what we all used to hate to redefining some of these issues. So bullying, I mean, past a certain point, beating people up or like sexual abuse or something is something schools have dealt with for a while. We're now, I think, redefining teasing and fighting between kids and so on is totally past the line. And this goes on well beyond this. I mean, on most most college campuses, sex after a bottle of red wine would be technically defined as rape. I mean, if you comment online that the cheerleaders for a junior college look attractive, you're 100% likely to be accused of pedophilia. You know, racism has been redefined to mean 100 different things. So the question is whether we want to move to those new, broader standards that apply to things that used to be thought of as pretty much just normal, I think. And that's really the root under a lot of this. Like, you saw the University of Wisconsin, was it their rock? Like, there was a rock on campus that had
A
been
racist rock.
Well, yeah, the rock had been referred to by racist names in published articles like 100 years ago. So the students, this is an absolutely real thing, the students launched a march against this rock. And a couple of weeks back, the rock was actually removed from the campus at the cost of about $70,000. They put it in a special park, and their comment was, we want to get rid of all racism of any variety. So, I mean, I pretty much agree with Shemeka. I think you can't make, this is why entire schools have kids wearing 2 masks because one kid got COVID and got sick. I don't think you can try to eliminate risk entirely. But a lot of modern Americans who don't face really the old threats are really tempted to do this. So that's kind of corny and cliche what I just said, but it's also true. Like, yeah, the idea that fighting in school is some incredible problem, that's a very recent idea.
My brother lives out there, man.
Jennifer.
The racist rock situation is a great example of how ridiculous and ludicrous it's gotten. And in fact, it was only referred to the slur one time, just once, by a journalist off campus. So, in 1925. So, but because it had become a quote unquote symbol of racism, just the symbol of it was enough to have him bring in a ginormous crane and haul off the rock. So, I mean, this is what we're getting to, where anything that offends, the slightest little thing, you know, these cry bullies basically get their way and have it removed.
Well, let's go to the second part, though. Remember, my second part was, how did we get to this point that we were so mushy soft? But why did the adults in the room acquiesce?
First of all, they don't want to be called racist, right? So, I mean, they're trying to be actively anti-racist. So if you're actively anti-racist, you're going to do things like remove a rock because 10 Black student activists said it reminded them of racism. So, you know, that's their way of showing that they're not racist. And this is a big business on college campuses. I mean, you know, millions and millions of dollars are spent on campuses across the nation every year on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these people have to do something, right? So, I mean, this is an industry. This is a complete industry where, you know, everything is built and predicated upon this narrative, and they have to keep on finding things, you know, like Will said, to complain about. And now that it's 2021 and we continue to be the land of opportunity, what's left? Well, this building name, you know, this 300-year-old statue, this 10,000-year-old rock. I mean.
Right. Yeah, and that just doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint. What's funny to me is, while I don't agree with them, but I try to think of, I'm a logical guy, so I try to get an understanding and think logically, what is their end game? Not the grifters, not the people who are doing it just to make money, but the people who sincerely think that they're making things better. It's fascinating to me that they will remove the names from buildings and all this kind of stuff, but then they replace them with names. You think if they were going to do that, they would replace it with building E1437, because we know human, which is why I think these people don't understand that human nature is flawed. They're trying to fix things within humans you can't control. Well, we're going to make whites nicer. We're going to make these people X. And this is another example of that. So they replaced the name of evil racist John Calhoun, and they name it after Bob Smith. And then in 20 years, you realize Bob Smith was a pedophile, and then his name has to go. In 50 years, you get rid of him and you replace it with Joan Johnson, and you find out, you know, 80 years ago, she ate meat, and we're in a society where people are all vegetarians, and we frown on that. So now that name has to go. So then the dominoes just keep falling. So it doesn't even make sense. It's the problem when you honor people; they're not going to be perfect.
Well, and underscoring that, I should have also mentioned that there is this helicopter parenting participation trophy generation, right? where the kids are being, it's been called the coddling of the American mind. So that is another thing that you have to factor in, is just the way we're raising young people now isn't doing them a disservice. I mean, like Shemeka said, hey, I got jumped in high school, and I was bullied and I was called a bunch of names. And I think at the end, it actually made me a stronger person, because that's how we get stronger, is through perseverance, through adversity. And so if they're never taught, the hard knocks way of life, every little thing is going to offend them. And, and then they get to college and tell them you should be offended. Somebody looked at you funny. That's a
Right, right.
microaggression. Report them to the bias response team.
Right, right. And you and Shemeka make a good point. I know I've mentioned it before, I won't tell the whole story, but everybody, you see these posts where people say, well, how did you start speaking out against this stuff? What was the trigger? And for most people, it's something political. And mine was the basketball, women's basketball, when they just gave Nikisha Sells a layup so she can break the record, even though she was injured and she couldn't play anymore. They just let her limp out on the court and do a layup. I'm like, how is that fair to the person who has the record? And so this is where everything's going. Like in Shemeka's case with the tug of war, today's people would just tell you, just drop the rope, right? Don't even try, don't pull, because God forbid somebody
the
will
bravest
get
thing
hurt.
you can do.
Just
Dropping the rope. It eclipses all your other tug of war accomplishments.
Yeah, it's better than winning. Winning is okay, but better than winning is to just drop the rope. It's
Winning
sad.
and explaining why is the new winning.
Exactly. So you're right. It can't go anywhere with a good end, and yet there's a growing number of people that are nodding and clapping to this stuff, and we see it on campuses. Well, at least before this recent kerfuffle, we saw it on campuses before everywhere else. So would you say the campus is like the foreclone that's pointing out what's going to happen in the future? When you look on the campus, you see what's coming down the pike for the culture. So it happened there first, and now it happens everywhere else. Because you look at us outside of the campus, and we are, basically doing what they were doing on the campus 4 years ago, right? So are we now just, becoming like they were? And is the campus, you say it's worse, what's happening there going to be the next phase and what's happening not on the campus?
Yeah, there was an expression, we all live on campus now, that was kind of going around when everything was being canceled, and it's still being canceled, or people were being shouted down and bullied and told to shut up. So everything that we've been watching on campus is now manifesting itself in Silicon Valley, and the Google tech firms and the mainstream newspapers, and then the critical race trainings that started on campus are now in Fortune 500 companies. So yeah, it's all now manifesting on a larger scale. So we have to pay attention to what's going on campus and make sure that we understand what's at stake, which is the future of our nation. And then just to circle back on what we're talking about the children that are wrapped in bubble wrap, and helicopter parents and the participation trophy. And this is something that Will and I have talked about too. But the people that are now the oppressed, marginalized, they're the heroes on campus. They're the ones that are celebrated, and they're the ones that are everybody comes around and you're so brave, you're so courageous. So they have an added motivation in accolades to sort of be the victim. A victim is a badge of honor on campus.
This is what how you and Will, you talk about and write about, and tells his book and all that with the hate crimes. People looked at that weird because it had never happened before, and they're like, well, why try to study the mind? It's like, it's pretty simple. You incentivize it. you put a prize, you put a value on, saying that you were attacked. How are you treated? GoFundMe pages now, you can get rich. So I mean, it was a natural step for people to start doing that, right?
Absolutely. And I think Will and I talked about at the last count, there was 643 case studies of hate crime hoaxes that he has on file and from high school and college campuses over the last since 2014. Because again, it's a winning move. You're celebrated, you get all the attention, you get the hugs, you're brave. So there's a motivation, and it all circles back just to this whole entire mentality and narrative that we have where we celebrate people who claim that they're oppressed over oppression that really isn't even true oppression. So it's very surreal.
Right, right. I also think that everybody's attacking the woke corporations and talk about woke capitalism. And I think a lot of it has to do with the college campuses, but because while they're talking about diversity and they want, more minorities, they're also pushing these companies to be younger. So when we ignore what's going on campus, when those people graduate, those are the next executives, right? So those are going to be the people that are going to be running the company or getting handed over, certain positions of power. And that's what they're used to. So that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I, like Shemeka said, I want the old days where we grew up, where we were called names and we learned to tough it out, and we learned it's not the biggest deal and you'll live. And one of the things I always used to tell my kids growing up is, look, life's not fair. Deal with it. We have just too many parents nowadays that are willing to coddle their kids and, tell them that, fight their battles for them. And they get to college and they expect to be treated the same way. And unfortunately, the administrators are playing the game right next to them. So.
Right. I argue that they were the worst. They're the bigger part of the problem because they're the adults in the room. So if they don't put their foot down, this stuff won't stop.
Yeah.
But some people, what do you say to the people who say it's not that bad? I mean, that there's bad in these stories. Like I'm sure you've seen some of the things like Jonathan Mark's book, Let's Be Reasonable, where he says the problems are bad where they are. But, most professors and most students are just going there to teach and to learn. And those are just isolated incidents. What do you say to that?
Well, first, I think it's a death by a thousand cuts for, center right and conservative students. I mean, it's starting at freshman orientation all the way through their all 4 years. I mean, constantly getting professors who are only telling them one side of the story, not giving them a chance to argue, debate. So I think it's that bad on college campuses. And then underscoring that, look around in America. As all this diversity, equity, inclusion that the campuses have been pushing for 3 decades made America a better place. No, look around. We're as divided as ever. Mm-hmm. So the policies on campuses are having a direct impact on the discourse and the civility of America. It's ruining it because everybody is now seeing the color of your skin first and foremost, or your gender or your sexuality, and not just as Americans.
Right.
When back in the day, in the 80s, and 90s, where I think it was way less so hyper-focused on race, that we could just kind of all, I mean, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, because you tell me, I mean, in the 90s, was it as bad, for people of color, and maybe I just was ignorant of that, or was it less drama and less...
Shemeka?
I thought the 90s was great, but I'm sorry. I'm wondering, what exactly did you say, Will, when you said that sex after red wine is rape? Because I'm thinking in college, I had sex after Mad Dog 2020, and some of those men went on to be very successful. So I'm wondering, can I double back? I'm just trying. What was the rule on that again?
I think that rule, there's the statute of limitations there too, but I think that rule
is there though? Have you seen Kavanaugh? Is there a statute of limitations?
That's different. That's just personal ruination. But no,
right. Well, she might get paid.
All this is just BS on campus. None of it applies in real life. You're probably safe if you go out with your wife, your girlfriend, whatever. But no, what I was saying is there are a large number of college codes that have redefined rape to include sex after I think it's more than 3 drinks.
Oh, wow.
And whenever they've posted one of these online, a whole bunch of men and women have chipped in that's every date number 2. That's everything I did in college.
Right.
Everyone's a rapist. So I think the point there isn't this is good or bad. It's that as we've gone past all the things that are actually evil, when you look at Stonewall Jackson, brave man, but he was a slave owner. We can at least debate that. We're now just talking about everyday bullshit most of the time. No one has slaves now. So the presumed defense is the statue of Stonewall in front of the building, as Jen said. So it's the same thing with this. I mean, when you see a statistic, never as a man to minimize sexual assault like Jen was I want to hear the people of color talk about some of the racism stuff. But but like when you hear 1 in 4 college women will be sexually assaulted, that doesn't mean like attacked by a guy who jumps out from behind a bush with a knife. That's a statistic that Charles may have said that doesn't mean anything, but it's a statistic that comes from that includes like, have you ever had sex after more than 3 drinks? I'm surprised it's 20% and not 80. I mean, but have you ever had sex you weren't enthusiastic about? Almost every man who's come home from work could respond to that. You know, so it's we're taking these things that are human universals and we're saying, I have a problem with this type of human behavior. I have a problem with men buying women drinks or men being attracted to younger women. And it's like, you know, so does my priest, but it's pretty accepted that that's human nature to some extent. We're now trying to change human nature in the absence of the real old evils. That's the point. In the absence of wars between blacks and whites and natives, where the sides have armies and chiefs, we're now looking at the statues of the old generals and chiefs and saying this too is bad. To me, this is mostly just BS. Go to school, keep your grades up, stay in shape, you'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, and then the other problem, though, is that if you want to, you giving them, you know, I am always giving them their argument. If everything's about equality and race and gender equality and treat everybody the same, yet in that stat, they only poll women, and the 3-drink rule only counts for women. So the guy and the girl have 3 drinks, right? Right. The guy and the girl have 3 drinks, and he's a rapist.
Well, actually, that not at all to jump on anyone else's point, and I do want to hear what the female members of the panel have to say here, but this is a thing that's happened as someone with an executive job in college. Like, there's a famous poster that was posted up in a couple of Ivy institutions that said, and correct me anyone if I misquote, but it was like, Jack and Jill go back to Jack's room, and they decide to have fun and hook up. Jack and Jill each have 4 drinks. They have sex. Jack's the rapist. And as a man, it was kind of like, what about Jill? Like, this is either nothing or it's a completely consensual situation where you could go after either party. But this is where you get into some of this weird residual stuff. Like, a lot of sexual assault offenses, bluntly, or a lot of other things that might come in the context of, say, a divorce, only apply to men. So if you're going to make your sort of fake law, and you're going to keep in that provision from the real one, you're going to wind up with these weird star chambers that are actually going to wreck the lives of a pretty large number of dudes. This is why people right and left have been commenting on these obscure kind of Betsy DeVos educational provisions. But I mean, like, whether or not men get it worse from all this nonsense on this one issue, not on many others, the question is that the point is that we are moving into this nonsense. Like, sex after drinking wine on your second date is not rape by any conventional definition. If you expand the definition to include that, you're going to make a very large number of people rapists at the same time as that traditional abuse of women was so sharply declining, something we should have been celebrating. That's the point.
Right.
Shemeka?
Well, I agree, and I was gonna say I've had sex after several drinks, and sometimes that's the best.
Me too.
You know, it's the most fun. But I agree with Will. If you open that up, not only does it make more people rapists, but I think that it also allows women to not be accountable. And that's one of the things that I'm noticing now is that we allow women to get away with anything. You can't criticize women. You can't correct women. You can't tell a woman that, hey, you know, they just want to holler, my body, my choice, which it is, and I'm very pro do what you feel like you need to do, but since it's your body, could you also have, you know, make sure you had birth control, or make sure he had a condom, or make sure, you know, like, we have to start taking responsibility as women, and I sometimes feel like women get off really easy because everybody just seems, you know, to think, oh, they're a victim, they're oppressed. It's almost like the race thing, you know, it's like black people can do no wrong, women can do no wrong. And so if you open that definition up, you're just going to allow women to be able to say, oh, I had 4 glasses of wine, that's not what I meant to do. Well, you should not have had the wine then if you knew it was going to cause you to make decisions that you may not be okay with.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of this also, like, people really do forget that this can happen to men too. Like, if we're not talking about classical sexual violence, like the idea that you can have 5 drinks with the guys and wind up with someone you might not otherwise have chosen, you know, having spent a certain amount of money and being inclined to take an STD test. I mean, like, that is very specifically a thing that crosses human classes, sexes. So again, we're taking this stuff, we're saying it's a lot worse than it is. That's because we don't have a lot of real problems. If we keep up some of this stuff like the racial conflict, we make it the best. Oh, but last point.
No, go ahead.
Another thing with this also is, I agree with Shemeka about this new form of feminism, because it seems to be returning to the old idea of women as extremely weak. Like, women aren't confident riot girls that can go out and party and bring home guys if they want to and dance their ass off all night. Instead, like, women need chaperones. Like, if you're a woman and you're out on a date with a guy, you need someone to regulate how much you drink. You know, if you and someone consensually hook up back in a dorm, have a pleasant experience, would you regret it tomorrow? He's a rapist, but you're not. I mean, all of this seems to be returning to a very old pre-feminist idea, which is like the vulnerable woman that needs to be constantly protected by men, where you need a group of other women or a strong guy there to keep you safe as a woman. No, I think women can handle going out and drinking and partying just like men can. So,
I think the point though is more sinister than that though. I mean it hurts men and it hurts women in general, but for the people who are pushing it, they know what they're doing. I think it's more sinister than that. I think they want a hybrid. So they want to be able to, the future is female, girl power, black girl magic, women rock, women are the strongest. Well, anything you can do, I can do better. But still just hold on to just a little pocket of the special sauce where we can sprinkle that in when we need it. So we fight as equals, and when we lose, but I'm a girl. Right, so it's like, I think they're trying to get, at least back then when it was like that, the chaperone, the this, that, the that, they weren't trying to get the other side. Now they're trying to do both. We want to be the vast majority of PhDs, most MBAs. We want to own businesses. We want to know why we're not the CEO of the Fortune 500 company. And when you treat us the same way that you treat the man, including the bad way, like, punk, shut up and do this, then here comes the magic dust. And now you got to speak a certain way. So I think they're trying to do both, which is kind of the problem. But Jen, you want to add something? I want to go to another phase, but I want to know if you want to say.
I agree with everything that's been said. I would say
we're great, aren't we?
There's a professor that has a spreadsheet of all the lawsuits that have been filed against universities by young men who have been railroaded by campus sexual assault tribunals. And I think at last count, it was like 250 or so lawsuits. But the double standard is there. It's real. Guys can't regret their drunken encounters, but a woman do. It's rape or sexual assault. So it's been a real problem on campus. In fact, it was so bad that Catherine Lehman, who was in charge of the Office for Civil Rights back when all these campus kangaroo courts were railroading young men, the Senate didn't let her be confirmed to rerun that office recently. She was rejected. That's how bad she did it. When when Democrats are in charge of Congress, but they won't even let her back in charge, shows you just how bad young men were being railroaded. And it's unfortunate, and it's a complete double standard.
Well, that's definitely, we can do that whole topic. If any of you out there listening know, reach out to Casey Johnson. I want to talk about the campus race crisis. I want to talk about that book.
He's an expert, and he has plenty to say about that. Yeah,
because I think that is key. And I like it because it's not coming from the right. Usually if it's somebody who's just blindly right, they were like, well, you have an agenda. He just thought that there was a problem. So I think that's important.
He comes at it from like a legal standpoint.
Yeah. It's one of the books I send to people. I'm like, hey, you all need to read these books. But she doesn't have a boy. Otherwise, I would have given it to Shemeka. But everybody I know whose son's going off to college, congratulations, read this book. I want to talk about COVID on campus and how that is either affecting generally from the remote thing, but mostly how it is, if it is, I'm thinking that they always find a way. If it's creating a scenario where they're able to advance their extreme radical agenda even more because of that, like using COVID as a cover to slide in more stuff into the curriculum, since we're remote anyway, let's do this, or, that kind of thing. What have you seen in the last 18 months that is either directly or, kind of an indirect way associated with COVID?
I think the mandates are onerous and draconian. I mean, most colleges right now, what's happening right now is colleges are telling the students that even if you have been vaccinated, you have to wear a mask indoors. So it's just out of control, the regulations, and they're training students, they're grooming students to be weak-minded lemmings who don't know how to fight for their rights and demand, autonomy. So I think this is a very insidious situation where young people are giving up their freedoms and their liberty, allegedly under the auspices of health. Look, 20-year-olds, 19, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, all the way up to 30, 40s, they're the least likely to have any complications from COVID. You're more likely to get struck by lightning than for, a 20-year-old to have serious complications from COVID. So, and yet they're treating these kids like you're going to die if you don't wear a mask. So this is grooming kids to obey Big Brother, obey who's in charge, don't question authority. So I'm just more worried about the mental and psychological ramifications of this.
Shemeka, what do you have to deal with? What have you seen? You're on the college campus right now.
So I did several times hear the question, are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? Because you have to go and get your ID and check in and then get your keys and all of this, so are you vaccinated was asked a lot, And so I'm just wondering how that's going to be on the college campus. Like, I know even just in the real world, they're kind of trying to pit vaccinated against unvaccinated people. So I'm wondering what the dynamic is going to be here on the college campus. I know a lot of kids, I just heard one today said he didn't have a choice. A lot of parents didn't give their children a choice. So I'm wondering, how are they going to feel when they come in contact with kids who actually were given a choice and are not vaccinated? What's that going to be? Is it going to be like in the real world where, people are saying, if you aren't vaccinated, you shouldn't be able to eat, or you shouldn't be able to grocery shop, and you shouldn't, I'm wondering what that is going to be like, because, I hate to come up here and turn this whole campus all the way out.
Side note, were you being attacked by a tree, Jennifer?
Oh my God. So you guys, I'm on the West Coast. And the sun is, I cannot get my podcast situation set up, so I've been experimenting in different backgrounds. The sun is literally coming down as we're talking, and you're going to see slowly as the sun's setting.
I'm like, wow, there's a nice shadow on her now. That's weird. I wonder what's going on. Then I'm like, there's a tree waving, and then she disappeared. And then it's like she was attacking, the tree was attacking. I'm like, please don't let her lose. We don't want to film her demise by a tree. But you beat the tree.
I apologize. Hopefully,
No, it's fine.
Soon I'll be blinded by the sun. It's a beautiful sunset here in Southern California.
Must be nice.
No, yeah,
other than like we were talking to someone before, other than the recall and the homelessness and the can't go outside and the lockdown and all that stuff, other than that, it's great.
Don't forget the gas is almost $5 a gallon.
It never rains there.
Traffic.
Yeah, but it's warm. But it's sunny, so.
Yeah, so. The COVID thing is totally grooming these young people. And like Shemeka said, it's more division, the vax versus the not vax, they just love dividing and conquering these young people. And it's definitely playing out on college campuses right now.
Well, what I'm seeing, though, the reason I ask is because, I work in the education space, but not as a professor like Will, but, nonprofit, doing events and things of that nature. And what I'm seeing is they're taking these nonprofits. Actually, they're creating new ones, but they're taking this as an opportunity to have all these, virtual events. So they have more and more events where they invite all these people in, and they're pushing the anti-racism stuff to the workshops with college professors or administrators and, parents to come in and talk about when you send your kid, you should do this. So I think they're they're using it to find new ways to push this progressive racism, as I call it, further and further down the road. And that's what I kind of see. They're using it to their advantage in that way as well.
But, look, the critical race theory situation is embedded in all 4 years, as I mentioned. I mean, it starts with freshman orientation. It continues with mandatory electives, the freshman reading program, the dorm room sensitivity training, The teachers, the professors who have an agenda to, teach these kids to think a certain way. All 4 years. Again, it's just week and week or month after month after year. And then when they finally graduate, you don't think that's going to have an effect on them? Absolutely. So everything that you see on campus now manifests itself in today's society. Where, AOC, she's a prime example of, the college mentality, all the stupid, ludicrous ideas she was taught, she bought into. Now she's pushing a Green New Deal that'll bankrupt America and arguing that socialism is the answer. This is what they're taught. And then they come out and they believe it and they vote that way.
Right. And that's what I think is the problem. So let's talk about down the road a little bit. Do you think, now you and Will are probably the experts, and you can tell me, you can separate the Ivies and the big schools from the others too, because, they're a little bit different because they got the endowments and that kind of deal. But do you think that if they continue down this path, because they're blindly doing it because, some of them are making money, some of them are true believers, but they're just chugging. They're not paying attention to what's going to happen. So not immediately, not 2 years, not 5, but down the road, do you think that this is going to hurt the overall higher ed industry? Will there be more kids trying to find alternatives to college because they don't want to deal with this? More parents saying, well, I'm not going to send my kid unless your college is not XYZ. More businesses, where the business owners are not woke, saying, well, instead of just going to recruit at Vanderbilt, I'm going to go to some other places or create my own crop of people so I can get around this stuff. Do you see, because I see little stories about people like, graduates who became wealthy. I'm not donating money to my college, my alumni association anymore, and things of that nature. But do you see pushback in that regard if they keep going this way?
I definitely do. I mean, I think more and more people are rethinking whether the return on investment for a 4-year degree, especially at a private, university that may charge $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 is really worth it. I think more and more parents are questioning, that decision and talking to their kids, say, hey, maybe start at the community college for a couple of years, get a job, try the military, maybe a vocation, learn to code. I think more and more people are starting to wise up to the higher ed racket and realize it might not be the greatest option for their child. Right.
I know so a couple Fortune 500 companies that had gone 7-8 years ago to the everyone must have a 4-year degree, no matter what you did at the college. And they've since moved back away from that now. So, and these are obviously large companies. So if they're doing it, I can see smaller companies doing the same thing. I think that's going to happen.
My husband's in IT, and he a lot of times when you're applying for an IT job, they'll tell you you can have a 4-year degree or equivalent work experience.
Right.
So it's like the IT field, they just want to make sure you can make sure the computers run. They don't care where you went to school. So I think there's options. I definitely think there's a place for college and a place for higher education. And I've also noticed that more and more different kind of college options are popping up, and with online and everything. I'm hoping that there'll be a shift, and colleges will have to be held accountable for sort of their largesse that they've enjoyed for so many years.
If I can jump in with one point here, a lot of what you're discussing right now gets into credentialism and the idea that as a business you can't just ask for things like IQ and EQ tests. So, by the way, can you guys hear what I'm saying? Like, is there sound in the background? Okay.
We want to be at your party, Will.
Okay, good. Yeah, so in terms of like Jen apologizing for like there being vegetation in the room or whatever, I'm actually at a bar because I did a local speech. So hopefully everything's going through pretty well. But anyway, and just wanted to check that out. Anyway, college to some extent, the problem that we're dealing with is pointless credentialism, where for a long time, there actually are legal case decisions saying that you can't ask employees for IQ board scores, anything similar. And as a result of that, the college degree, the 4-year degree, became considered the metric, the equivalent of that. What we're now seeing, though, I think, as a businessman by background myself, is more and more employers deciding the college degree might be worthless. if you just get a 4-year degree in any random thing, black
Right.
feminist studies or whatever the case might be, there might not be any skills that attach to that. So you are seeing more people add conventional work experience on. One very serious point here, though, I think coming from the center and the right, is that I don't think anyone wants to destroy higher education. At least I don't. Like the fact that higher education is currently dominated by woke idiots in a lot of institutions. The problem there is the woke idiots. It's not higher education. It's not learning Dante or something like that. So the goal ideally would be to remove a lot of this from the college space. It wouldn't be to surrender and leave college. I think what you're going to see right now is a lot of people doing a combo program where your kid goes to a good community college, gets 2 years of a top degree for $4,000, or joins the Marines, which any sane employer is going to take more seriously than you graduating from like local state tech, and then maybe thinks about it. But the ideal would be that there are alternative colleges out there, or reformed versions of the colleges we have now, that you can just go to if you don't want to fight overseas for 4 years. That you can go to if you don't want to do 2 years at the community downtown. But in the meantime, of course, people are going to seize those other options as the degree loses value. Because all that degree ever was, to some extent, was an IQ equivalent. If I had my own choice as a boss, I would have just pure IQ test. Like, I would have IQ test, and especially for males as well, also an EQ test. Like, can you work with people? Are you an asshole? Excuse the language. But those two things together, someone's IQ and EQ score, would almost totally predict how good they would be as an employee. I don't know if anyone disagrees, but I don't think you need a complex office of admissions, so on, to figure out who might be a good salesman. You could put them on the phone and let them make sales, and you could have those two scores.
Right. My only disagreement with you is that as much as I don't want to destroy higher ed, I don't think some of them are teaching Dante. You're not allowed to read Dante.
The problem is that very few of them today are teaching Dante. So the question is, would, say, Maya Angelou have the same effect? And then going
No
beyond
Russian
that,
literature.
she is a great poet, though. But going beyond that to like Ta-Nehisi Coates or virtually anyone on the left or the right, are you getting the same education that you would if you're going through those courses in calculus and Shakespeare? And ideally, this should be a totally non-political point, but it's not.
It's not. Yeah, it's true. Lastly, Jennifer, I would love to, the College Fix. I love what you all do. I used to pass it around the office. It used to be the thing of, what crazy story can we talk about that's happening on college campus now? And as I said before, I thought all of those problems went away. I thought you were out of business until Will mentioned. I'm like, what College Fix? College problems are gone. We only talk K through 12. The colleges are humming along, and you broke my spirit by telling me it's still bad. So give me some of your goodies, some of your favorite, most memorable colleges out of control stories.
Yeah, well, one of my all-time favorite stories is actually an oldie but goodie, but the University of California system put out this list of microaggressions, and it's a common list used at campuses across the nation. But basically, they teach and taught professors and students that saying America is the land of opportunity is a racist microaggression. And that story went viral when we published it. And ever since then, people have been saying, oh, they are teaching that America is not the land of opportunity. And you can't say things like the best person should get the job or that kind of thing. But it still shocks me that in today's day and age, we can sit there and tell our students that saying America is the land of opportunity is a microaggression. I mean, it just boggles the mind.
Let's talk about that one for a minute. So I get, just to be fair, I disagree with them. I don't want people saying, I thought that he had common sense. It's silly. But if they want to say, well, I don't think it is the land of opportunity, and this is why, have that debate. But they're saying it's a microaggression. So that means it's subtly aggressive to some group of people. Do they ever say who that is?
That is a racial microaggression because it
blacks.
ignores.
So to the panel.
Yeah, because it ignores the history of oppression that America has infiltrated.
But when you're saying it, right, aren't you saying this is present tense? Do they have tenses? Do they teach English in college? The land of opportunity. Not in 1841. This was the land of opportunity.
No,
so they're saying you can have an opportunity.
Situation.
So Shemeka,
like I just spent this part of my work this morning was listening to this Resist Fascism podcast where this professor was basically saying, no, America needs to be
held to account?
No more. You know that it's not for people of color. It never was. It never will be. It's a horrible place. Just dismantle it.
Yeah,
Or give us reparations.
and you said
This is-
today.
Today I was listening to that. So yeah, no. In a college campus setting, they're absolutely taught that America is a horrible, racist, hopeless country. But of course, when you step outside of that and you realize that people are flocking from across the globe to get into this horrible country, how ridiculous is it on its face?
But here's a weird dichotomy though. So Shemeka, you're black, I think. You're an American, I think. I never really asked. I didn't do an interview or anything. We didn't ask for credentials. But I think you're American. Do you think that you have opportunities in America?
I definitely think I have opportunities in America. And when I think of people like Michael Jordan, Beyonce, Oprah, like that's American.
They're black,
who
too.
else has a Beyonce? What other country produced a Beyonce or Oprah or Michael Jordan or LeBron James? My daughter raps and she has a song that says, I don't expect no handout 'cause I'm black. I really can rap. So it's like she even believes that this is the land of opportunity. And
Well, you can say that phrase. Can you phrase it differently, please? She thinks that this is a place where you can do some stuff.
this is a place where what is it? You can do a thing,
Right. A thing happened.
Right, a thing happened. So, it's crazy to me that people would believe that that's the wrong thing to say. Like, why not teach your children, regardless of what happened in the past, regardless of what you feel like is happening right now? That's not going to stop you. Only you can stop you. That's what I teach my children. The only enemy you have is really your inner me. If you don't want to succeed, then that's your choice. But if you do, no one can stop you. And so I don't understand why we're really to me, we're teaching oppression. Although we are saying we're oppressed, I don't know how you get someone
we're the
from not
oppressor.
be right. I'm like, how do you cure oppression by teaching oppression? I don't understand, because we're giving people excuses to just not succeed. And I think I've said before, like, I wasn't given an excuse. My mother had me at 15. That never gave me a reason to come home and not, with bad grades, or to go to school and act like an untamed gorilla, or, like I had to act right and I had to succeed at any activity I was put in. I was expected to be the best. I'm not really sure what's happening now and why we are teaching people that it's okay to lack. I saw something about a governor somewhere signing something.
Oregon.
Or
It was
was it
Oregon.
Oregon? Yeah,
That
and
there's
it's
no
like,
proficiency anymore. You don't have to be proficient in math or science. Or prove
Right.
that you know anything to get a diploma.
that is so crazy to me, because what happens when these people that don't have to prove they're proficient graduates and goes out into the real world? You
They
can't
fail
come
and
work
then they're
for
angry.
me.
They don't blame themselves. They're angry.
Yeah, and you don't know the difference between your and your, you don't know the difference between the theirs, and, you couldn't work for me with that foolishness. So I don't, know what's happening here, but it's not helpful, that's for sure.
But wait, here's an interesting thing. I started my question to you, but because there's a weird dichotomy. So you said this is a land of opportunity. You don't think anybody can hold you back. You have opportunities, and you're black. Now, you're also black. I'm flipping the coin. You're black still. You're still American. You know other black Americans. Have you ever heard this phrase from a black American? Let me see if I can put on my African American hat. I'm usually black, but I'm going to pretend I'm African American. Have you ever heard this one? Yeah, but that don't surprise me, because this country ain't never been for us anyway.
Oh yeah, I've heard that all the time.
So it's the same people, but that's what's weird, Jennifer. I wanted you to hear the same people who would say, man, ain't nobody gonna stop me. I can do this. I can do whatever I want to be. Will turn around and say, well, yeah, they never really wanted. This is never our country anyway. That's not our constitution. So they want. It's like the women in the dust.
Right.
The blacks have it too. Then they say we want the opportunities. We want you to give us a chance. We want to prove that we're equal to you. Don't think you're better than me because that's racist, which I agree with. But then when anything gets a little shaky, they want to pull out their butt. Hey, it's 1743,
Right.
1619.
Exactly.
Wait a minute, pump your brake. Constitution not for us. 3/5. You know, they like to throw out these random phrases, but they didn't read the whole thing because that's not what the 3/5 meant. But that's what they get. So it's funny. So we, as black people, we've all heard it, and it's weird because we hear it from the same people, the same
Right.
one of my black friends that come to me and talk about, man, wish me, say congratulations. I just bought a house in the Hamptons or whatever, right? I just my son just got his second PhD and he's going to Mars tomorrow. What up? And then the next phrase is, man, Whitey be holding us down.
Right.
All of us? You? Because you got a house on Mars. You were just moving to Mars. Yeah, well, I'm just one. And then what about your cousin and your brother? And what about everybody else we went to school? And you just keep going on the list. Well, I get what you're saying. Stop. I'm trying to make a point. Don't go using facts on me. So it's so funny. It's like to the point that I just hear and I'm just like, okay, whatever. But but the thing about it is whoever wrote those microaggressions, Jennifer, I'm pretty sure they weren't black. So I then have that problem. I was talking to Charles Nagy today, and he was also obviously canceled from the University of Central Florida for some tweets that I read after the fact that weren't racist. But, it's the same thing. I talked to him about that, and he was talking about how we got to this point that some blacks think that, and minorities think that they were agreed before, which is true. And so they like, well, we need voices. We need people at the table. We need voices. We need this. So maybe they just overcorrected. He tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I said that would be true, except for one small problem. The voices you hear ain't minorities. You go to a BLM march last May and June, who was out front? If you go watch the tapes in New York, who was yelling at the Asian and the black police officers in riot gear saying you're a traitor to your race? They were white. I guarantee the person who wrote these microaggressions lists was white. It's always some white liberal that's going to make things better for blacks on our behalf. Shemeka, get out the way. You're cute. That's so sweet. But you don't know how bad you're struggling. With my white privilege, let me tell you how much you're struggling, and let me clean it up for you. So
Exactly.
all that is just another form of the same racism we already had.
Yeah, I experienced that a lot this summer when we were going out doing different rallies in different states. We would have people, mostly white people, doing the Black Lives Matter. And anytime I tried to engage in conversation with them, they wouldn't even talk to me. They would just stand there and still yell, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And I'm here trying to have a conversation with them. So I'm like, my black life matters, but not my black opinion. So it was like,
There's a
here
viral
you
video
have-
of you saying that, I think.
Yes. But I'm like, here you have a black woman trying to hold a conversation with you, but you don't even like the fact that I feel like, first of all, I don't need you to tell me that my life matters. I already know that. So you don't want to hold a conversation with me because I'm
Not an
not
actual black, no.
feeling oppressed, or I'm not feeling down or discouraged. Like, you can't even talk to me. So that's one of the things I can't stand. And it is always white liberals or white leftists, and they don't see how racist they are. Like, I don't need you, and I said this before, how they start to sing to you when they're talking, and they're like, oh my God, you are... Oh my God, you guys. And I'm thinking, why are you singing? You can just have a regular conversation with me. I'm intelligent, I'm smart, I can catch what you're saying. I don't need you to talk like this. Are you okay? How was your day? I hate it. And it's always them when they feel like that they are connecting with you, or they feel
They're coming
like
down to your
they're-
level.
Right. And it's like, how condescending, and they don't see it. Like, I don't think they necessarily do it on purpose. I don't think they say, hey, let me offend Shemeka or every other black person. I just think they think that's what we need, and they don't realize that in doing that, you are saying that, like you said, you're up here and I'm down here, and I have to you have to come down to my level so that I can understand what you're saying, or you got to make me feel good. It's almost like the woo 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 patting me on the head. I don't need you to pat me on my head. I probably need to pat you because, I'm going to be quiet.
I think that to be honest, I think because they believe the madness that they hear, I think they're trying to make sure they're not a threat. Because,
Right.
If you haven't heard, all black people are being shot in the streets. by
Exactly.
whites.
We're being
So
hunted.
they want look. They want to tiptoe to you and like, no, I'm a gentle white. I'm not one of those white. I know most white people are racist, but I'm a good one. Well,
Right.
wait, I'm racist too because all whites are racist, but I'm a good racist. I'm a
Right.
nice racist. So they're easing up to you so you don't attack. But
When really
I gotta
they're
let,
probably Miss Millie who turned her head when her husband snuck out to those houses in the back.
I gotta let Jennifer give me a couple more good examples before she disappears. She's turning black. I'm supposed to act.
I know.
I'm supposed to be professional and act like I don't see this. But I started off with one woman, and now there's a whole different woman on the campus. Be professional. Keep rolling. So Jennifer, give me another example of the craziness that you remember on the campuses.
Well, I want to tell you one, but I don't know how X-rate. I mean, we already talked about, red wine and whether that's sex or rape, but there's one that was and landed on the Drudge Report a few years ago that was pretty racy. So am I allowed to be racy for a minute? Or
Of course, Shemeka's here.
Okay. So, most of the colleges host what's called a sex week. And
Oh yeah, I forgot
basically
about
it's,
this week.
yeah, and they're very popular, and every university has different kind of workshops. But over the years, we've been covering a few that are getting really kind of crazy. There was one at Harvard where they were teaching the students how to have anal sex, and there was one at the University of Chicago where they were teaching the students how to have BDSM sessions. So it's really it's not the kissing booth. It's not your mom's kissing booth anymore at the college campuses. They've gotten really, really racy. And I remember when those stories came out, and we just could not believe how interesting things had gotten. Certainly didn't have that when I was on campus.
Yeah, and what they're not learning when they're focusing on all this wokeness in the classroom. Oh, I think if there's any silver lining from this stuff, though, is that they finally canceled Woodrow Wilson. I was like, my God, he is my least favorite president. Why are people lauding him? Why does he keep getting the pass? It got so bad that they went after Wilson. You know it's bad because they loved Wilson. You know it's bad when they
Yeah.
went after Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, no, that
Poor
was
Woody.
at Princeton, I think. They took him off the building name. I think they took him, he was on one of their schools. He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
actually president.
Yeah, he was the president. So he was the president when they used to allow blacks there for a couple of weeks in the early 1900s, and he was president, and he nixed it. It's like, no, we're not having any blacks as president. Y'all better go to Columbia or something.
Yeah,
Go down there
so
to Columbia, to Harvard. Don't come here.
They definitely erased him on that campus.
But it took 110 years. He was the most openly racist president ever. And they just like, hey, black people were like, yeah, love Woodrow Wilson. I was like, man.
Yeah, I think because he was a progressive, right? Isn't that why?
Yeah, he was a progressive. He was a racist progressive, but he was a progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
But
a-
that's our point, though. I mean, okay, but let's learn from that. Let's not erase it. Let's learn from it.
Yeah. We just will teach the things we want to teach. Shemeka, what's going on back there?
Well, because I was like, what is BDSM? I was
Okay, you remember? Wait, watch this, Jennifer. Watch this. Look at her face. Watch this. You remember when we had Gabs on and we were talking about her son being treated like he was a white student and the things they were teaching him and making him say he was an oppressor? But then we also got into his sexual preference that they asked him, and I was talking about them teaching fisting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that. It's like a second. It's like the 200 level of that class. After you learn that, you learn bondage and
It's
sadomasochism.
like,
Oh,
what's
Bond,
that? What was
okay.
those famous books?
What was the
They
book?
made movies out of them.
50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, the 50
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding,
Okay.
ding.
Yeah, I turned to my kids and my mom
is-
like, what is BDSM? And they're like, so
Well, Charles wanted the crazy stories, so I'm sorry.
Well, look, if you come back next week after your daughter's been on
Exactly.
campus for a week, she'll be like, all right, look, I've been in class. Let me here, turn on the projector. Let me show you.
exactly. I'm like, my goodness.
Yeah,
Sex
she'll have
ed has
props and everything.
changed.
Yeah, you didn't have that when you were at school, right?
No.
So, Is there anything you want to leave us with, or tell people about the college fix that you all are working on, or where they should go, or all that? What's going to give us more dark news about college campuses?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think that I'm grateful for professors like Will, who are willing to speak the truth and just call it like it is. And I think that, as we talked about, more and more people are realizing, and the jig is up kind of, I think, on higher education. The canary in the coal mine is dead. I mean, everybody knows there's indoctrination now, that they have an agenda, that they have a narrative. So the trick is, as parents, and this is especially true for you, Shemeka, as your daughter's starting college, she might get some, things that you don't agree with, that she's being told by her professors who she looks up to, she respects. And the point is, as parents, we got to make sure that we're asking our children what they're being taught, and then offering them the other side that they will not get from their professors. Because I promise you, the professors are only going to teach one side, their version. Most do not offer a balanced course, so it's up to us as parents to be proactive, to be engaged, to ask them what they're learning, and then give them the other side of the argument.
Sounds good. Well, thank you. What did I do?
Welcome.
I didn't mean to do that. I pressed the wrong one. See, it's all live. What are you going to do? So, thank you, Jennifer Kabbany, editor with the College Fix, for joining us, and I really appreciate it. Shemeka, anything you want to say as we go out?
No, thank you, Jennifer, and I would definitely be paying attention. And for Sex Week, I'll probably just come and stay in the dorm.
Nice.
Well, get the free education. Well, thank you all for watching and listening, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got a country to say 'cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving the day.